not only Sean O'Malley, but even the Brazilian guy, Poatan. There's so many guys that are so big for the weight class. Um, like before, few years before, let's say TJ Dillashaw was the champion. He
Yep.
was not so big. He was
No.
not too big, but even him was caught by steroids, So
UFC now goes from USADA to Drug Free Sports International. What do you think about that?
I think they're gonna have more control, like
Did you like USADA?
yeah. I used to like USADA. USADA, they used to be very democratic with the fighters. I think John Anderson Silva got caught. He was suspended. John Jones was suspended.
How's it going, man? How have you been? Good?
Been good, and you?
Good, man. We're good here, just talking a little MMA. No pun intended. Obviously, it's been a few months, man, since we saw you last in action. What have you been up to in this time, man? Enjoying life, training? Talk to me, man. How's it been for you?
Enjoying life, training, getting back to hard training sessions, getting back to get ready for a training camp. After my last fight, I had to heal a few injuries that I have been accumulating over the years. And at one point, I considered retired, but I decided that I gonna, I still gonna do it, still gonna fight.
And when was this you were considering retirement, Ronnie?
I think when I was scheduled to fight Cody Garbrandt, I had a very serious injury in my neck, and this injury was a hernia, a hernia in my neck, and was really affecting my daily life. I was sleeping 2 hours a night for like a week, and I was feeling so much pain through my arm, and I was doing everything to get back to normal, and nothing was helping me, and I had to. So I was pulled out of the fight. The doctor pulled me out of the fight,
Out of
gave
the
me
Cody fight?
the Cody fight, gave me a steroid pack, and after that I started to feel better, start to do physical therapy. And I really thought about to stop, because at that point I already had over 40 fights and 20 years in the sport. So I really consider that. Um, but this is what I do. This is what I still love to do. I still dedicate most of my hours in the day doing that, and I still feel that I have some more fights to do.
Is it just your love of the sport, I guess, or is it also the combination of you just feeling better and now you sort of reconsidered? Like, or do you feel 100% now? Because obviously the neck can be a very serious injury. How do you feel today?
About the neck, I learned how to deal with it. I learned how to recover my strength. I know my limits as well. Something that I need to work it on with physical therapy and
No
strength and
surgery?
conditioning. No, I didn't need a surgery. In the future, I might need, but not now. Now it's not necessary. But the way it was like pressing the vertebrae. It was pressing way too much, So was after rehab, I was able to earn a little space between the hernias, and I started to feel better.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not only the love of the sport, but it's like you said, the combination of many factors. I'm still under contract with the UFC. UFC is the biggest show in the planet, so
No doubt. Yeah.
I still want to do it, and I still have the desire, still have the fire on me to do it.
That's the important
So
part.
that's the most important. I agree with you. I agree.
The game is very mental, right?
Yeah, yeah, very, very mental. Yes. So I just needed some time to restructure myself, which is something that I'm still doing it.
Sure.
Very soon I'll be ready to go and jump in a training camp.
I mean, you brought up the 40 fights, right? You've been in the UFC since 2011. That's almost 13 years, right? That alone is a huge accomplishment. Did you see yourself still fighting in the UFC 13 years later when you were back there in 2011? Would you have ever imagined being here still?
Not really, man. Sometimes I feel that fighting is like it's some sort of a karma, a good karma in my life, because at that point, even before I got to the UFC,
Yep.
I was already considering stop,
You already
because
had a lot of fights there.
yeah, at that point I already had 21 pro fights, and I was starting started to feel some consequences from the sport. The first consequence, like concussion, too much weight cut, a few injuries. I had to go through surgery in my elbow, in my knee.
Yeah.
So so and then uh, uh, a few months later, I started to think about that. UFC announced that they were gonna merge the WC fighters,
That's right. Yep.
and then I had the opportunity to fight in UFC. But if it wasn't for that, if we still was still WC or any other show, I wouldn't be fighting anymore. So
Wow.
because of the UFC, I thought, man, I got to that point already, so I can't stop now. It's like when you see it's like when you walk in the desert for many days and then you see a lake with water,
Right.
You say, finally, finally is my time. So when you see the lake in the water, you decide, no, I'm not gonna die now. I'm gonna walk a little more. So I had the same feeling, because UFC was a dream for all of us.
How much have you noticed? Because again, we just spoke about your longevity in the UFC. How much have you noticed the UFC's changed since you started to now? It's changed a lot, right?
Yeah, changed so much. Changed so much.
Yeah,
First, one thing was about I remember when I started, they have that huge meetings that they used to do with the fighters, like that they bring all the fighters in the to have to have meetings there. And when I was there, everybody was talking about steroids. Everybody in the sport, I would
it's a
say
big part of this
98,
game. Yeah,
yeah, 98% at that time, it was like a rule for them. They were on steroids. Everyone you would talk, they wouldn't express themselves like they wouldn't say, hey, I'm using steroid or anything like that. But when you have like a confidential talk with a coach or a fighter and talking about someone's teammate, they say, oh, that guy does it, that guy does it. You need to do that, you need to use that. So I said, man, I'm part of the 2% that don't do it. So this is one thing, USADA came to the game, is one big change. The
yeah.
other big change, I think, was the sponsorship, the Reebok sponsorship, now Venom. But at that time, you still could use the any sponsorship you wanted.
That was a big
And
hit. That was a big hit for the fighters, right?
yeah, very big hit, yes. And another thing was how the sport grew internationally, like was was gaining a space all over the world. So many
Absolutely.
countries that at that time we would never expect, like China, for example, Sweden,
Yeah, Saudi Arabia.
even Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, even Brazil, man. Even Brazil, like because in 2011 was the first time they went back to Brazil, and then the sport exploded here, in Brazil again. Like people knew Anderson Silva, but not the very big media, you know.
Yeah.
And and if we talk about techniques, but talk about training, um, uh, uh, training methodology, it has been changed so much, things that we used to do at that time is totally overrated now. It's totally, you know, it passed, the sport, MMA changed so much. Things that you do now, like that things that we used to do like a year ago is already is gone. Like in strength conditioning, for example, the way we used to train like 5 years ago, we don't do the way we used to do anymore. No, I remember like in sparring sessions, we used to do like 6 rounds, because we think that we if we're gonna fight for 3 rounds, we need to do 6 rounds. Okay. And that was the rightest thing to do in the world at that time.
Yeah.
The people who was not doing that type of training was not doing right, and that was right at the time. And then after that became an era where you have to you cannot injure yourself, you cannot overtrain. Why you gonna do 6 rounds in sparring if you're gonna fight three? You cannot spread your energy, your stamina for 6 rounds. You gotta put the intensity in all 3 rounds. So all those things.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you for explaining all that. I think that was a very in-depth analysis of how much the UFC's changed. And I got to agree with all those things, right? As far as the division that you're in right now, how much do you feel that's changed over the years?
Yeah, he also changed
Because
very
obviously, I'm
very.
thinking you got a guy like O'Malley now at the top of the division, right? Who many people maybe never thought would have even been champion. It feels like
mm,
a drastically different place now.
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna talk about one very big change that
Sure.
was not about only my division, but my division, it can represent what I'm gonna say. Was the
Okay.
size difference of the fighters. It changed so much, and the fighters now they cut a lot more weight than they used to do before. You know, um, for example, many people. I used to fight at featherweight. I used to cut weight to fight at featherweight at
Yeah,
145. You know,
that's
now
crazy.
people come to me and say, "Hey, man, you need to go to flyweight to 125 because I'm one of the smallest guy in my divisions. When talk about height,
You
you
just
know."
fought a guy with the biggest reach in the division.
Yeah, correct, exactly. So O'Malley also represents that. He's very tall, long reach.
Mhm.
So he represents that. People cuts more and more weight over the years. This is something that if you ask any fighter if they have to change something in the sport, if they want to change something in the sport, would be the weight cut thing. Because over the years they cut more and more weight. And after the UFC made the decision, I think in 2016, the Athletic Commission made the decision actually, but influenced by the UFC to have the weighing in the morning weighing, because before we used to wait at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the day before, and then now we wait at 9 a.m. in the morning. 9 in the morning. So what does that mean? That the fighters have more time to recover the weight.
Sure.
So they get even bigger in the fight. This is another aspect, another change. And I think Sean O'Malley, not only Sean O'Malley, but even the Brazilian guy, Poatan, there's so many guys that are so big for the weight class. Uh, like before, few years before, let's say TJ Dillashaw was the champion. He
Yep.
was not so big. He was
No.
not too big, but even him was caught by steroids, you know. So yeah, those were the changes.
And one thing I was going to ask you about that I did forget was the change about USADA, because I know that you did bring up the drug testing, and this slipped my mind. I meant to ask you this for the last question, but what do you think about the change now? Right, I forget the name. I got it here. For UFC now goes from USADA to Drug Free Sports International. What do you think about that?
I think they're gonna have more control, you know, like
Did you like USADA?
yeah. I used to like USADA. USADA, they used to be very democratic with the fighters. You know, I think I mean, Anderson Silva got caught. He was suspended. John Jones was suspended. Who else? Many big names.
Yeah.
Dillashaw was suspended. You know,
Right.
and it doesn't matter if they were champions or not. You know, I'm not sure that's gonna happen with this agency. You know, I'm not really sure. When I saw that at first, I thought, man, this is a step back for the UFC. You know, I heard one guy, you know, who knows he's an athlete from another sport, and he told me that this drug-free agency is more severe, is even more severe than USADA. But was only one guy who talked about that. So I don't really know what to expect at this moment.
Yeah, I don't know too much about this new drug testing agency either, so I was curious to get your thoughts on that. So as far as your next fight, when do you think you'll come back? Maybe 2024, something like that?
Yeah, 2024. The plan is 24, first semester of 2024, maybe April, May. Yeah, 2024, definitely.
And we talked about your mortality in MMA and how you were facing that, right? When you didn't know if you wanted to retire or not a couple of years ago, right? I think you said something interesting, something along the lines of you're not ready to put the donkey in the shade quite yet, right? How much longer
Yeah.
do you see yourself fighting? How many more years do you think? Obviously, it's hard to put a number, but do you see at least maybe a couple more years at least?
I will say a couple more years.
Okay,
Couple
so you're
more
not
years.
taking it like
Uh,
fight by fight or anything, right?
no, I think fight by fight. I have
Okay.
to think fight by fight. You know, I cannot, at this point, I cannot think too way ahead. You know, like I need to give my best in my next fight. You know, that's
Yeah.
why I'm taking the time I'm taking. You know, because I want to be at my very best. If I think that I'm gonna do 5 fights, 6, 10 more fights, I know maybe I'm not gonna do my very best in my next one because I'm gonna think no, my next one is just one more.
Right.
But I'd rather take fight by fight now because from now on, every single fight I have is very important. You know, every single day, every single training session I have is very important for me right now.
I'm very curious. What are your goals still in the UFC at this point, at this stage in the game? Like, again, what was it, 13 years in almost? Do you have any goals still in the company that you are looking to achieve?
Um, my goal is to win my next fights.
Okay.
That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say.
Taking it fight by fight.
Yeah. After my last fight, before my last fight, I was in a 2 win streak, and I
Yeah.
was supposed to fight Cody Garbrandt, which was a former champion. At that point, I still had the dream to fight for a title because with 2 win streak, and then if I had beat Cody,
Yeah, we spoke about that. I think it was like a year ago, maybe. I think you came on. We were talking about it coming up, and it was a big fight for you. Yeah.
yeah, it was a big fight. So that would put me in a good position, like to eventually be ranked and escalate the rank and fight for a title.
There
I
was a
still
clear
had that.
path.
Yeah, I still had that achievement. After my last fight, I got knocked out. I had to take some time. From training, so I start to have a clear vision from outside perspective. And I thought
Right.
to myself, I am 38 now. I was 38 at the time. I didn't fight for the title for all these years. Um, so now I'm not in my prime. I'm definitely not in my prime. So I'm not gonna fight for the title now. And this is something that I have to work mentally, because if not, if because my whole life I was looking to be the number one in the world on what I was doing. If I was competing in a local jiu-jitsu tournament when I was a child, I was doing that because someday I was gonna compete. I was gonna try to become a world champion in jiu-jitsu. If I was doing a local grappling tournament, it's because sometime I would become a world champion in the ADCC. And the same thing in UFC. If I was fighting the prelims, it doesn't matter. Each single fight I had, I was thinking about that one day I would be, it was a major goal that I had to become a champion. So it was a huge change in my mindset that, it was hard to me to accept that how I gonna fight if I don't, and try to win if I don't have the desire to become a world champion, So this is something that I'm still working on it, to mentally to be prepared to, because it's something new for me.
Yeah. I hope you're able to get that, resolved and, find resolve on that again. But yeah, I mean, at least you were a champion in many facets. Like you won the ADCC, which is among one of the hardest things to do in all of mixed martial arts, right? I mean, that to win something like that is insane.
Yeah, it was the way I won that tournament was like one of the happiest days in my life.
It's a huge
uh,
achievement. It's very
yeah,
prestigious.
yeah, like for competition, I had 4 battles, 4 wars to become a champion. And it was a dream that I achieved. Definitely a dream since I started in the sport.
And I see this shirt, man. Obviously, you're still repping American Top Team, still training at American Top Team, I would imagine. How are things now those days? How are things these days in the gym? Obviously the talent that goes through there is unbelievable.
Unbelievable, man. It's definitely the very best team in the world. So many information, so many. Every day I'm there, I learn a new thing. Right now, I live in Brazil. I go
Yep.
there just to do my training camp. My manager is Dan Lambert, the owner of American Top Team. My head coach is still Conan Silveira. Right now I'm in Brazil because I live here, and but I can say that that is the very best team in the world, definitely.
What's the secret?
And uh, I mean, there are many factors,
Sure.
definitely many factors. But one thing that I gonna mention today uh, is about the lack of ego, that the coaches have to put themselves there, because ATT is not only a team, is a multi team. Like they're not like one striking coach. There are 5 striking coaches.
Right.
There, there are 3 wrestling coaches, 3 BJJ coaches. And then
Yep.
you make your team inside the team. So because of that, the level gets so high. Is because you don't get to the competition environment where you're gonna spar, you're gonna fight with
Yeah.
another guy, like some Russian guy who's living there. You're not gonna spar with the guy and fight with the guy, no.
Yeah.
But the coach know how to manage the training. There is no weak on that aspect, and everyone there wants to see you win. If the Japanese guy who doesn't train with you win, is good for the team. Like if the other guy who is in your weight class also wins, also good for you. So
Right.
I think it's that how they manage their egos is very important too. They're very successful by doing that. I mean, a big team like that with so many fighters, and I don't see like any many teams who last for way too long like them, performing the level that they are, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
the other
mean,
secret
it blows me
is
away what Dan Lambert's been able to do there. It's been great.
yeah, yeah. The other thing is Dan Lambert, man. His love for the sport, you know. He invests on the sport. He invests on that. So he's the other secret, I would
Yeah,
say.
absolutely. Great fighters, great infrastructure, all that. It's exciting to see, what could even be next in the future as they continue to get better, bring in more fighters. But nonetheless, Ronnie, thank you so much for joining us, man. It was nice to catch up with you. Obviously, you don't have a fight going on right now, so we don't have to dive into anything like that. But nonetheless, it's good to see that you're doing well. I'm glad you've been able to cope on the mental, physical aspect. But thanks for joining us, man.